Hello, everyone. I am here with Linda Lael. I'm sorry, Lael. I said it wrong. I've been practicing it forever. Miller. And I am so excited that you're here, Linda, because I want to talk about your book before we dive into how it became a movie. And you're super talented. And I'm like honored that you actually are making time to be with us tonight.
I'm delighted to be here. I
Oh,
really am. I've gone to your channel and subscribed.
oh,
I'm on board with the whole
okay.
thing.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Lots of chats. We're always chatting with somebody. I love it. Sometimes I have a partner that comes on with me. Her name is Kathy, and that's when we do a lot of Wayne calls the heart stuff. So, but otherwise, I'm usually solo doing my own thing. So I love it when people come on because it keeps me company, and I'm not just talking to space. All right, now this is how I want us to get to know you. I want you to tell me what was something that you read when you were younger, like your favorite book.
Really early on, I read things like Trixie Belden. She was a mystery
I got
kid.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even the Bobbsey twins. But I loved Trixie Belden and then later Nancy Drew
yes,
because, it was so ahead of its time, even though the books
yes,
had been written in like the 20s, I think. But
yes.
Nancy was in charge. Nancy had a car. She didn't need Ned to come and save her. And I just thought, wow, this is incredible. It wasn't the way they were about women when I was young. So I was really a Nancy Drew fan, and I loved Trixie Belden. That just seemed magical. Pippi Longstocking, anything that had when she would get things out of that tree, it was just the
She's
coolest thing.
cute. Do you know Pippi? I read with, I'm a teacher and I read Pippi with my kids. Like there's always one group that wants to choose her. And I have to explain to them what the word pip means, like you're a pip. And I'm wondering if like we do a little research, never really says that that's what that word means for her, but she is a pip. So everything you just said, except for me, it was my first book that I know I love, I still have it, was Corduroy. The message in that story, and the little bear that had the little button missing, and the girls thought, oh, let me sew it on, he's perfect. Oh my god, I love that story. But Trixie Belden, that's what made me fall in love with reading, was that series. That blows me away. I'm so excited.
I still remember the delight I would feel when I would start a new Trixie Belden book. I think I read all the standard stuff, Gone with the Wind and Rebecca and
Yeah,
all of those things.
right.
But those stories just stuck with me for some reason. In fact, I'm tempted to see if I can find them on Amazon or eBay and just to read them again.
You can. And I actually had my series that I discovered when I was a young girl, and I had them for years, and then we had to move and I gave them away. But then I love them so much, I bought like the first 10 again because they're just so good. Oh my gosh, I love that. So you had that, like, you woman in charge even back in the day when it wasn't so. And also, I don't know, the whole mystery of it, trying to solve something, right? I mean, I
Right,
love.
I just thought it had everything. Adventure. She had her two friends, and one of them was a girl, but she was named George. I mean, it was just the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. But I really loved how much independence she had. She
Yeah.
had her own car, and it morphed. I think early on it was a roadster, and later on it was more modern, like a Mustang or
Yeah,
something.
you're right.
But those books were wonderful.
And I love there was a TV series when I was really young that was pretty good. That was good. Oh, so what about your favorite author? Who would you say is your favorite author if you have one?
I think my favorite author is Dorothy Dunnett. She's gone now, but she's a Scottish author, and she wrote two big historical series. One was called The Lymond Chronicles, and it was about a man named Francis Lymond, and was he was the ultimate hero. He was just amazing. But she wrote, I think, 6 books about him, and then 8 about another character called Niccolo, and he was from Amsterdam. And they were just wonderful. But the thing about these books is uh, that you could read them, wait a year to read them again. They are so multi-level. Uh, I don't know how she did that. And I had the privilege of meeting her once years ago, and I asked her that, did you really know for 8 books you knew, pretty much everything? She said she did. And I mean, I have no reason not to believe her. But what an incredible brain you would have
That's
to
true.
make room for all that, because it's multi-layered
I
and
love that.
all kinds of subplots. So she's my favorite, but I enjoy modern. I don't read a lot of romance simply because that's what I write. So it's
Hmm.
a busman's holiday for me. I read thrillers. I like Colleen Hoover and uh, is it Sherry Lapini? And there are a number of people writing. Minka Kent, I think her name is. People who write these suspense. I'm reading Lisa Jewell right now. I think more people have heard of Lisa. That's what I read for recreation.
Actually, that tells a lot about a person. I always like to know what someone, if they're a reader, when I first meet them, and then I also like to know what it is that they read, because to me, I feel like it kind of is a little bit like a secret into your soul that you don't even realize you're revealing, which I find fascinating. So, some of those authors I am not familiar with, but I will have to go back and look because I'm a reader. I love to read, and I'm always looking for something different and new. And it seems like you and I kind of have like the same taste.
Well,
So,
I think if we were out to lunch, we could just have a great time. Maybe go to a
yeah,
Barnes and Noble, and
yes,
we could
yes, right,
actually show each other.
yes, yes. It's true. It's very true. So I'm thinking, what in the world made you say, "All right, I'm going to be a writer"? Like, did you know it from when you were younger? Did you stumble into it? How did it happen?
I did know it from the time. I'm one of the few people who knew what she wanted to do with her life from the age of 10. And
Wonderful.
I was reading, I just gobbled up. We'd have the Scholastic Book Fair. I think they still do that.
They do.
And my
Wonderful.
mother would allow me to order so many books, and they'd come, and we
Mhm.
devoured them. We swapped them with each other. And we had a little library. It was a very small town. And I just loved that. And then one day, a teacher told me that they actually pay people to write those books, that you could earn a living that way. And from that day forward, that was what I planned to do. And I wrote pretty much from that day forward. So yeah, I like to say, when people say I make a lot of money, I always like to tell them, if you average it out, it's probably about 10 cents an hour.
Oh gosh, that's true. When I was in fifth grade, so I was about 10, I had a teacher, Miss Ewan, and she would tell us of what genre meant and go down to the library. We had library every Wednesday. Try this book, try this genre. And so I tried mystery, and she told us what it was about. And I remember the book I fell in love with. It was The Case of the Missing Rubies. It took place on a like like a ship, like a on a big cruise kind of thing. Anyway, I'm a writer, and the first book that I single title that I had published, I dedicated to her. And we had like this big, my mother called it the wedding because it looked like a wedding, but it was this big book signing. And I made sure she came in honor, and she cried. And I'm like, you don't know the words of a teacher, like I'm a teacher and I'll forget this, like the words of a teacher, how it can inspire you. Like your teacher's telling you, you get paid for this. So there you go. You're out and you start your a career, and it's a passion. So I think that's amazing. I love
Eh,
that.
I love that you're a teacher, and I think teachers are so very important. I had a teacher in high school who taught me. I never went to college. I just thought it would be better to do stupid things. So I
Yeah.
didn't go to college, but I educated myself. But this teacher taught me. I compare it to people who can play the piano by ear.
Hmm.
She taught me to hear, as I put it, the music that words make. Her name was Crystal Harworth, and she literally was life changing for me. And this was a tiny little town where uh, we didn't always get the teachers that were, top market. We got the ones that were either right out of school, but for such a small town, we had an amazing number of really first class teachers. And I feel so blessed about that.
That reminds me of the show When Calls the Heart, where they have this little tiny town and they have this amazing teacher that's top notch and she goes to the town. So you're kind of live that. You know what? Tell us about your little town. Like your father was a marshal?
Yeah, he was the town marshal. I grew up in a place called Northport, Washington. It's about 9 miles south of the Canadian border. It had
Oh,
at the time about 500 people. And my dad was actually the town marshal. He was also, as he put it, the road commissioner, which meant that he plowed snow and
yeah.
graded the streets. And he worked so hard for really a tiny amount of money, but he was a man of integrity and his guidance. And that, of course, my mother too. I
Hmm.
got my love of books and words from my mother, unquestionably.
Hmm.
And she's gone now, but she really could have been a very successful writer. She had such a way with words, and you could not beat her at Scrabble, no matter what.
It's another
And
game I love.
I asked her once, though, why didn't you become a writer? She even had a small piece published in the Saturday Evening Post, but back then it was a big deal.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, it was big time writers wrote for that magazine
Yes.
then. But she said, I don't want to do the work.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
I respect that because writing is a lot of work. There's a lot of rejection. That. There's a lot of just plowing on when you don't feel like it.
And
And I respect that she realized, instead of so many people that tell me, if I ever get a free weekend, I'm going to write a romance. I love that one. It's really hard to be, you know,
yeah. Now,
not get really sarcastic.
I know that's hilarious though. And oh my gosh, especially when you live with a character for a while, like then
Oh, yes, I do. I feel like I'd know my characters if I met them on the street. It's
yes.
like they're real people and they're just not in the next room right now, but I could find them if I wanted to. They're very real, and I sort of immerse myself in a story. I bet you do too, and I'm living with those characters. So if somebody asks me a question out there in the real world, I
Hmm.
may or may not, sometimes have to repeat things or nudge me or something because I really totally get involved in the story. Everything fades around my computer and I see it like a movie in my head and I just write down what I see.
I love that. Now, that's what we're going to talk about, like how your characters come to life. Like that's like mind blowing. But before we do, here's my question. You have over 100 books, over 100 books. Really? Like, how did you ever think that that would happen?
No, no. I mean, in a lot of careers, 6, 7, 8 books is a good solid career. Uh, the thing is, I was writing what they used to call pot boilers. Early on, I wrote for the series, and
Yes.
the books were shorter. So
Yeah.
in order, and of course, I made a lot less money back then. So in order to make a living, you had to write fast, and
Yes.
so I learned to do that and to just turn from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit more elbow room now, but that habit is still with me.
Which actually is good training when you think like it's a
I,
good
I think
discipline.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a good discipline. Okay, so I'm thinking your father's a marshal, you have this little small town, and you have a love for horses, I hear. Yes.
I adore horses.
Was that growing up or something like and then
Yes, yes.
okay,
The family, we had a part of our family. They weren't actually blood relations, but we've been friends for like I think
sure,
5 generations now. So
sure.
to me, they're
Your
family,
family.
and
Yep.
I spent a lot of time out on their ranch and rode horses there. I rode with my dad. I guess when I was 2 years old, he would put me in the saddle in front of
Mhm.
him. And he called it cutting brush, but it just meant chasing cattle.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm sure my mother was freaking out because she was a city girl. So I
Oh,
think she was saying, Skip, be careful, don't drop the baby, all
oh
that.
my
But I
god.
loved it.
Yeah. So a
And
city girl and she winds up in a small little country
yeah, she
town.
married a good looking cowboy. And
Oh,
that,
fell in love. That was it. I
that's
love
a
that.
whole other story.
Did you ever use it as inspiration for a story or no?
No, but it was a little too close to home. Some things are, but I did use a lot of things from stories my dad told me about when he was a kid growing up, because he was a bull rider when he was young, and his brother Jack was a bronc buster, and
Wow.
Jack, they actually rode at Madison Square Garden. Jack did several times. He was the real rodeo cowboy in the family, and he was a champion bronc buster, as they called him then. And he got to kiss Miss America twice for winning, you know. So he was a big deal back in the day. But they would tell me these great stories about things that happened alongside the road, and I would adapt them and use them in stories. So, yeah, there's quite a bit of that going on. I wish I'd asked more questions.
You know what? Actually, that's true. That's, I think, why I learned that as a kid. I ask a bajillion questions of everyone just because, and I really am, and it might seem like I'm nosy, but I'm like so fascinated and interested in learning about people. Like when my students, if I have 25, I like want to know all about each of them and their
Mhm.
families and then people I meet on the street, and my family's like, oh my gosh, like no matter where I walk, even though this is not a podcast about me, but I get what you're saying. You want to ask more questions. It's fascinating. And then you like wind up using them in stories, which makes you a good storyteller. That's so exciting. That's nice. I love
I
that.
eavesdrop a lot, and
Uh-huh.
my grandmother, the same person that lived on this ranch, she and her husband came to that ranch in a covered wagon. And as a child, she had lived outside of Coffeyville, Kansas. So she heard the day the Dalton brothers tried to rob the bank in Coffeyville, and you may know about that. And the
Yes.
ranchers and the businessmen had gotten word of it, so they were waiting for these guys on rooftops and stuff
Yes.
with rifles, and they shot all of them. And my grandmother, I guess the farm was like 6 miles out of town, but they heard the shots from this. Another time, a man rode up to the gate, and her father went down to talk to him. And usually, hospitality, you know, it was big then, and
Sure.
you weren't
Sure.
so afraid. You always invited somebody to have supper or
Yeah.
whatever. But this guy just went straight to the barn. So when grandma's father came back to the house, her mother asked him, why didn't you invite him into the house? And he said, well, I would have, or I did, but he wouldn't come. And she goes, why not? She said, or he said, his name is Jesse James, and people are after him on both sides of the law, and he didn't want to endanger the family by being in the house. So I thought that was pretty amazing.
Like he was a gentleman robber.
He was an, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, he
Yeah.
was an outlaw. I mean,
Yes.
you know, we've romanticized these people in movies and stuff. I think he was possibly one of the better ones, but
Yes.
somebody like, say, Billy the Kid, he's
Yes.
been so glamorized, but he was basically a serial killer.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You are
So,
correct. Yeah, I know. So you have all that great history, which is so cool. So what inspired the plot for Big Sky River?
well, having had a marshal for a dad, I like to write about lawmen, and that I basically that didn't have a whole lot to do with the story as it does with some books, but I wanted Boone to be um, a lawman,
Yeah.
and but my main thing with Boone was that he was a widower, and I haven't seen the movie yet, so I don't know how much it's been changed, but I'm very, very excited to see it. And from what Kevin and Emmanuel have said, it's going to be great. But
Well, let's talk about first. I'm sorry, hold on. Those that are here, they are big fans and of your work. They may not have read Big Sky River, so I want you to tell us about the book part of it, and then we can talk about how it becomes a movie. So, in the book,
okay.
like if you could share a little bit about Tara, a little bit about Boone. Boone is divorced. He has two sons, right? Not
In the book,
divorced,
he was
sorry,
a
widow.
widower
He's a
with
widower
two
with two
young
sons.
sons. In the book, and I don't know if this is the case in the movie, in the
Yeah,
book, he had sort of parked them with his sister and her husband
yeah,
because I think he was just deeply, deeply wounded by his grief, and he really didn't expect to meet anybody. And then this lovely woman moves in next door, and she has all these chickens, you know. And one of my favorite scenes in the book is when he came there to, I think the kids were there, so he came to get them in his cruiser, and there are all these chickens, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So he has to stand there a while and wait for the dust to settle. And,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it was, to me, it was comical. I like to, you know, I like
It's
to do stuff like that. So for me, the story was about that. Tara had also been deeply wounded by a divorce. She had a stepchild that she really loved. And of course, she had no rights where this child was concerned. I think that happens to a lot of people.
yeah.
They have fallen in love with them, spend a lot of time raising them, and have no really legal rights. But anyway, I think in the book, her ex, Tara's ex, he had something better he wanted to do, so he sent his daughter out to stay with Tara, and she bonds with Tara. Tara's an excellent character, and she's an excellent mother. And one thing I like to say in all my books, and it goes right back to Nancy Drew, that all my heroines are strong women. They all have their own goals. And while they really want to be with this guy, they love him and they really want to be with them, but they're not going to die if they aren't. You know,
Okay.
they're still going to do well. And because I think about a lot of people are of age that read these, but a surprising number of teenagers come up
Yes.
to me and they read them, and I want to portray women in a responsible way, not making them, you know, swooning and all that stuff.
Right, right. If they need a man to live, right? Like that's their definition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah. I want them to know
Cool.
that a man is a bonus, you know.
I get it. I get it. So, now as you're telling me about the character, it sounds like they stayed very much true to the characters' personalities in the script from what I've been reading and what the cast has been sharing as much as they can without giving the whole plot away. Which is cool. There's a really Nugent. Her first name went right out of my head, and I'm sorry about that. The actress who is playing her stepdaughter is a doll. She's very good.
Isn't she pretty? I saw her in the
Yes.
trailer.
And she's an excellent actress. She's young, but and Emmanuel talked about this. She has a seriousness about her that she really can do. Like it's
Mhm.
believable. Like she's already authentic and not just, cutesy. She's real.
Yeah,
So
that's marvelous.
it looks like from the promos and stuff, they're going to have some really good, heartfelt, touching scenes. So I'm looking
I'm
forward.
really looking forward to that. I'll probably cry.
I know of course we're going to cry. That means it's good. You have to cry. Now,
Yeah,
have you ever been to is it called Big Sky, Montana? I mean, I've seen pictures and stuff. Have you ever been to that area?
my mother came from Shoto, Montana. Big Sky River is actually fictional, but it would be in the area of Kalispell.
Got you.
Yeah. So I've been to Montana many, many times. My mother and, like I said, was born and raised there, and
Mhm.
her brothers were artisans. One was a saddle maker and a master carpenter. And so, you know, I
Yeah.
come from a long line of hardworking people
So you can
with
incorporate
stories.
all that wonderful stuff into your stories. Now, okay, so we have Boone. He is a sheriff, correct?
Yes, in the
And
book he is.
in the movie he is?
I don't know, but I think so.
He is in the movie. I was trying to repeat what you
Oh,
said. Now,
okay.
in the book, what's Tara's occupation in the book?
You know, I forget. I forget. It was a long time ago when I wrote that book.
Okay, she's a teacher in the movie.
Well, that really works well. I don't think she was a teacher, but I could be wrong. I have written close to 200 books since 1983. Yes, I received the Centennial Award from RWA for 100 books years ago. And
Romance Writers of America. I know what RWA is. Yes.
I stopped counting. So
That's
but
amazing.
yeah, I don't remember if Tara was a teacher or not, but it's a really good occupation for her.
She is. She's a teacher in New York City, and she's coming back to the area to Big Sky because of like she needs some time. It's the summer. She remembers like going to camp, horse camp there, and she's excited. And she does take care of the chickens. That's why in my little promo I call her the chicken wrangler, because she mentions how they were running all over the place, and she thought it would be an easy job, and apparently it's not.
No, I don't think it is.
They kept it in. Is there anything besides the chicken scene that's like iconic that's from the book? Like sometimes there's I was saying like when you think of The Bluest Eye, when I read that book, there's like a cup with Shirley Temple on it, and it runs through the whole story and has this huge meaning. I was wondering if there's anything that you remember in your book, like a cowboy hat, chickens, a food, something that runs through it.
I would say it's the chickens. They're kind of a theme, you know,
All right.
that, you know, they're meant to show the contrast between her life in New York and her life in Montana.
All right.
And so it's kind of a fish out of water deal, but
Yes.
she's so adaptable that, and that
Yes.
makes her a really good heroine.
Okay. I love knowing that. I love that because I'm going to use that. So I was also thinking, and I know in the movie there's a scene where they get to dance, and isn't your book there's more than one? Don't we meet some of the characters in other books as
There
well?
are two other books in that trilogy, and right at the moment their titles, they were both Big Sky, but I can't remember exactly what. But yes, I write trilogies, and the characters interact because from book to book, because the readers enjoy that.
Yes,
They
I
they
love
like
that.
the sense of community.
Yes.
And one thing I always say about my books, but mostly about the McKettricks, but it's true of all my books, is that when I write them, I want to embrace the reader. I want them to feel that if they rode up, there's a place for their horse in the barn. There's a place for them at the dinner table. That because this is a scary world right now, and it's always has been really, and so many people are lonely. They, you know,
Yeah.
maybe, and so to feel a part of a community and a part even of a family, and that is always what I try to go for in my books, is to make it so my readers feel as though they're embraced, as though they're part of this
Mhm.
community, this group, and I hopefully I succeed at it.
I think you do, because that's what is out there. When you go on social media, or you're looking for your name, that you read those comments all over, which I thought, oh my gosh, that means this is going to be a fabulous movie. I mean, I already know it's going to be fabulous, but I'm like, oh my, they have a lot to work with. Did you have any say in the script? Well, first, how did this even happen? How did you find out that your book was chosen and it was going to become a movie?
Well, this actually took a long time. The producers, bless their hearts,
Wow.
they really stuck. They believed in this project, and they stuck with it for a long time. But from my viewpoint, my agent called me and said Hallmark wants to make a movie out of one of your books, and it's this one. So that's how I knew about it. And then for a long time I didn't know anything.
Mhm.
They were secretive. I knew when they were going to film. I had a movie years ago, Lifetime did one called Last Chance Cafe. Back then, it was easier to travel. And
Mhm.
uh, I went up to Vancouver and watched and met Kevin Sorbo and watched the filming, which was exciting. And I would love to do that with this book, but it just wasn't possible.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah, I didn't really know a lot about it. And when I was interviewed by Kevin, interviewed all three of us,
yeah. I
himself
know.
included.
I know.
Yeah, he's really good at that.
I know.
And he asked me some of these questions, and had I seen it, and I said no. I didn't expect to see it. Usually, they're really careful about releasing, even to the author.
Right.
We don't get a lot of special treatment, but I've been just deeply appreciative and gotten to do these interviews, and I love doing that.
which is nice. We love it because it brings the movie more to life for us. Even if it's a book, it brings the book even more to life for us. And then we learn a little bit more. So we go back and we watch again or reread, and then we like get more meaning from all the little clues. So it's nice when people can carve out the time to actually sit and chat and talk. Like your fans are very much appreciative. I think it also is fun because then we start talking about it all over social media, and then more people are like, what? I want to, that kind of thing.
I hope a lot of people will come and see it.
Oh, we'll watch it. We're going to live tweet. So we go on Twitter. There's a hashtag Big Sky River. I know Emmanuel's going to do it, and we will be live tweeting. It'll be fun. So when I was talking to Emmanuel, she was telling me about we saw a promo where there's some dancing, and she was saying, and I think this is part of one of your other books, there is a singer who's very popular. So she lives in the town because she has, feels safe or whatever. So that character is in this movie as well. And she sings some songs, and she said they actually wrote them for the movie. So I was thinking, when you think of a book like this, what's like a song that would be like a theme in your mind that would sort of feel like it told a bit of the story of Big Sky and Boone and Tara? Do you have one?
I don't know. I think anything by Randy Travis would.
Okay.
On the other hand, though there was no question of cheating, but Forever and Ever, Amen. And I think that one would really sum it up.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Now we're all going to be going, checking them out on our phones and listening. So now I think I may have asked, and I get so excited I forgot the answer already. Did you ever get a chance to meet the scriptwriter for this?
No, I didn't. I would love to. I did not get to meet the scriptwriter.
Sometimes I have the script writers on. If I had thought more, if you
that would have been fun.
There's somebody going by my little studio here doing a thump thump sound from their car. I'm sorry if anybody can hear that, but I know I was like, oh, if I had more time, I would try to see if I could have the scriptwriter on. That would be fun, just to see what they had to do, and it's really nice when it airs. Then they could talk more about it. So maybe next week, I don't know. I'll put my feelers out.
Maybe it's possible they might be bound to not talk. We weren't allowed to show any pictures. We could mention it, but we weren't allowed to show any pictures for quite a while.
Pictures are out now.
Yeah, aren't they great? Those videos of Kevin and Emmanuel, and when they were dancing on that little stage thing, that was so cute. And I downloaded a picture that Emmanuel posted on her Instagram, and was her and she and Kevin. They were sitting down, but they were both laughing really hard at something, and it just said so much about how much joy there was, and how they really had fun doing the movie. And that is the best possible sign, is that joy.
Yes. And she's lovely, and he is lovely, and he's known to be a bit of a jokester and hilarious behind the scenes kind of a guy. So we're excited. We are so excited about the movie. Now, what do you, out of what you think the script is like, and we know the whole chicken scene, what are you most excited to see come to life?
I think the scene where they realize that they love each other and that they want to commit.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
And I don't know when that is, but it is a romance. So I think we can safely say that.
Oh, we're going to get it, but who knows where it'll, okay.
I have no idea where, but usually you would think technically, you're a writer yourself, it's got to be at 3/4 of the way through the book, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Or the movie.
I don't want it to be the last 2 minutes either. I want to see
10
minutes.
Yeah. I think the viewer and the reader wants to stick around for, and sort of share in the happiness of it. Hallmark is so good at that.
I know.
They are so very good at that. So I expect them to be at their peak, just like they always are.
They will. It's going to be good. Now, tell us about, I know your live is coming up. I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it'll be on Facebook, and I think it's linked to Instagram too. So what they do now is they have the actors usually interview each other, which kind of makes them feel a little awkward sometimes. But when you've got Kevin there, I'm sure I'm not surprised he took over. And you
He
got
kept it flowing.
yes, and you got to join in. So tell us a little bit something about your experience of meeting Emmanuel and Kevin. Anything you want to share? Any silliness of first impressions,
Well,
whatever
I
you.
was just delighted by both of them. The sense of humor. They were talking about how good she was at writing and how he wasn't so good.
I love
And
that.
he makes jokes, but he makes jokes about himself. And
Yes.
but he talked so sweetly about his family, his wife and his kids. And he said he wasn't a cowboy because he couldn't ride. And I said, no, Kevin, you are a cowboy because you live by the code of the West. And I think that took him aback a little bit. But he thought because he couldn't ride like a man, well, most of us can't.
Yeah.
I did that when I was young, but whoa, sorry, I have
No,
two
we get a
dogs.
doggy in every podcast. Don't you worry about it. I saw the little tail behind you. Like the dog.
Yeah, I have two of them and they're noisy.
That's all right. That's cute that you said that. That's true. He is a lovely man. That must have touched his heart. Actually, when I see him, I'm going to ask him about that, about what you had to say. Now, Emmanuel said that you have some really cool stories that you shared, but you have a Johnny Cash connection of some sort.
Yes, I knew John and June fairly well for years, and that was a funny line that Kevin had because he I didn't mention it until he asked about Casey, which is the singer you were talking about,
Yes.
and how was I inspired? And I said, well, I usually don't name drop, but you kind of forced my hand, and then I told him about knowing John and June, and he said, if it was me, every time I saw anybody, I'd say, my name is Kevin Smith and I know Johnny Cash. That had us all laughing. It was great. But yeah, he was a wonderful man. June was wonderful. They were generous, down to earth people, and they would have really loved this movie.
Oh, I love that. Do they have family members that you know that would be able to know and watch the movie, or you
I
didn't?
wasn't as close to their
Okay.
family members. I knew June's daughter Rosie fairly well, but she passed away. So there's been a lot of tragedy in that
Yeah,
family.
true. Yeah. Do you have any plans for turning another one of your books into a movie?
I would love to do that. That isn't my decision to make, though. It has to come from Hallmark or from someone else. But I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, so would I. Who all right, so we're gonna in a few minutes I started some things, we're gonna have to answer some questions and there's some wonderful comments. But I was wondering, so let's say someone's here and they're like, oh, I gotta read some of your books. Where would they start? What do you think's a good book to start with? Because you have like almost 200 of them, okay?
Uh, my most recent book is called Country Born. It's the third book in a trilogy. And the thing about these books is that they always um, stand alone. So you don't have to read
Yes.
the first, the second, and the third. If you want to, they're there and you can go back. But like, oh, my dog, he's like 2 inches tall and he thinks he's a wolf. So he does this wolf howl thing. Anyway, yeah, I would always recommend the latest one. And then I did a historical called The Yankee Widow, which was about Gettysburg uh, during the Civil War
Yeah.
and the women and all the how much of a part women played in kind of putting things back together.
I used to take that I'm gonna what was that one called again?
It's called The Yankee Widow.
I would like to read that myself, and I'll tell you why. So I taught 7th and 8th grade social studies for a long time, and we had a club, a Civil War club, and we would go to Gettysburg, and we'd stay at the college there, and we'd stay for like 4 days, and the most amazing stories they would tell us, like the about the different historical buildings, and like and the women had a huge part, and like people would be surprised,
Oh,
by
wow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
They buried all those bodies, thousands of bodies,
yes,
because most of the men were away fighting, or they were in the battle. So
yes,
it was mostly women. The grave diggers. He was off fighting. That guy that dug
hmm
the graves, and his wife was like 6 to 7 months pregnant, and she dug graves. And obviously they couldn't dig them very deep, and it rained, and it was, and yet they coped, and it's beyond most of us, our ability to comprehend that kind of destruction,
yes,
and yet they coped because they didn't have a choice. It was there in front of them, and they had to do it,
they
and they
did it.
did. They took care of men on both sides of the battle.
There's a story my students read, and that happens actually in the Revolutionary War too. There's like a little story, and then we read one. Actually, it was a real character. It's called Behind Rebel Lines, and Emma is her Edmonds, and she tells it's from her memoirs, and they made it into a book, and she tells the story, and she was not far from Gettysburg, but it's pretty. I'm going to be fascinated by that. I'll read that
If you
one.
send me your address after we're done, I'll send you the book.
You will? Well, that's so
Yes, I
kind. I
will.
can't purchase it. Okay. Thank you. I will send you the address. So I'm gonna put I'm gonna put Arlene up first. And this is a good question. I was going to ask about it, but I thought, oh, Arlene's asking. So Arlene is a big fan, and Arlene's the one who said, please see if you can get to have Linda on. So she says, is Parable a real town in Montana? And if not, what town is it based on?
Uh, Parable is not a real town. It's fictional. I
Mhm.
loved that word, parable. I look for, you know, words that sound like a Western town, and I thought it would again be basically be in the wide open spaces, kind of south of Kalispell. So there's timber, and of course Flathead Lake is there, and then there's a lot of open ground. So yeah, it's sort of in a
You
nebulous Linda world.
you've got that like in your mind. I think I'm excited. I wish I could watch your reaction as you're watching it. I'm excited for you to see the movie because the set apparently is gorgeous. The little bit you've seen of it, I've seen of it,
I
and then
saw the buildings. I was
yeah.
impressed.
And Emmanuel's like, we wanted to know if we could stay there. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm like, oh, beautiful. And she was saying it, of course, it was in Canada where it was filmed, but all that area is like so close anyway. It kind of has the same look. And I was like, you know what? I have to go visit Canada. I mean, I have to go check out what they
It's
have.
beautiful. It is
Yeah.
beautiful. It's very unspoiled.
Which is nice. Now you've traveled quite a bit, haven't you?
Mm.
Yes?
Yes, not so much recently with all that's
Yeah.
going on, but I've lived in London for long periods of time. I had a flat directly behind Harrods, and
Wow.
yeah, yeah, it was great. I saw Princess Diana one day when I was walking to the post office. I mean, I've had a great time. I've traveled a lot with Debbie Maycover. A lot of your people will know who
I
Debbie
know
is.
Debbie is. Yeah.
Yes, and she's my best friend, and
She
we have
is.
great stories. We actually joke that we might write a book about our travels abroad.
It's
We stood in
amazing.
a rainstorm under a tree once, because it was in France, and we came back early thinking we'd sit on the bus and rest our feet and look at our souvenirs and all that. Well, when we got there, the bus was gone. And there was like one tree, no people, one tree, and then it clouded up and rained, and so we were laughing. I mean, we've laughed everywhere in the world.
Oh.
Uh, we were hugging this tree, and
I
that's
love
only one of our adventures. So yeah, I've been a lot of places.
Oh, I love that. You'll have to come back and tell us more. You really
I would
will.
love to.
All right, I'm going to show you this one. This one's nice. This is Janice. She said, "My thoughts of college is that it teaches you how to learn, and then you are on your own. Also, having that college diploma only shows that you spent money on your education, not that you learned."
I think that's true. My uncle, who was a college graduate, which is kind of rare in my family, he said once that the biggest thing he learned at college was how much he didn't know.
Oh, see,
And I think it's true. I agree that it teaches you to learn, but a lot of us just for one reason or another didn't go.
right.
I think I didn't like the idea of having to study a bunch of stuff I wasn't interested in.
Yes,
I
yes.
wanted to only study,
What you wanted.
like literature and stuff, and
Well,
history. I loved history.
when I went to college and I had to sit down and I'm like, gym. I have to take a gym class. And they didn't even allow me to choose where everybody else I found out chose. They who had bowling. I said, "Oh, bowling's gym. I love that." I get track. I'm like, track? To run around a track,
Yeah,
so I was mad. I was like, I have to pay to do something that's torturous. I'm just not
I
happy.
was never an athlete either, unless you count riding horses, and my cousins were infinitely better at it than I was.
I used to ride. I would have taken that if that was one of the things at the time when I was in college, but it wasn't a choice, but whatever, it's all good. But I know what you mean. It's not for everyone. This is Christina. She says, "What an amazing journey, and it makes you a great writer."
Thank you, Christina. I don't know how great I am, but I'm perseverant.
You are. You're good. You're good. How old were you? This is Christine. How old were you when you wrote your first book?
15.
15.
It
All right.
wasn't published. I wrote a book. It
It's okay.
filled 26 spiral notebooks. I wrote it by hand. I wish I'd kept it. I really wish I'd kept it, but I didn't. And my first book that was published was Fletcher's Woman, and that was in 1983. I've been gainfully employed ever since then. So that's why so many books. It's a long
Yeah.
time.
It's been a while. It's been a while, girl. It's been a
Yes,
while.
ma'am.
Marianne saying, "Oh my God, what a family history you have."
Hey,
You
I
do.
only told you a little bit of it too.
Save it for the next
Yeah,
time.
I come from a wild background.
All right. Let's see. This is so wonderful to listen to. I love hearing your family stories, and I love Forever and the Night. That must be one of your books.
Hi, Shastina. I know who that is. Um,
Oh,
and thank you for saying that about Forever in the Night. I'm very proud of those books. Shastina is my daughter's friend, and I know her quite well. So it's great to see you on here.
hi, Shastina. That's wonderful. Okay, so we'll write those down too. And Marianne saying you're successful in drawing your readers in. Remember, you were worried about that. You said you weren't sure if you did, and they're telling you yes, yes, you do.
I think I'm so grateful for that because it is literally my number one objective is to make the reader feel included and part of the story, not somebody who's on the outside looking in, but somebody who's at the dance or the rodeo or whatever is going on.
Right, and you're feeling it. I remember one time I had an editor who said to me, he said, "Roxanne, when you're in the shower," I know, I'm like, "What?" Like, don't think of me in the shower. He goes, "When you're in the shower, do your characters speak to you?" And I thought, I don't know. And then it happened, and I was like, "I know what he means." So they're like real, like you said. So this is why I'm excited for you because you're gonna see them, your Boone and Tara come to life on the
That
screen.
is
And
so exciting. It really is. But yeah, it's usually when you're doing something else that the ideas and characters and dialogue come to you.
yes, yes. Like you said, when you're walking on the street, you're almost in another world because you're thinking about your character, and you also said that you would like to be able to find them too and talk to them as if they were real. And I understand. Arlene's back and she says she loves the man from Stone Creek and Maddie or the wonderful character. Oh, she's naming
That's
characters.
yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that. joke in the book. Uh, yeah, I loved Sam O'Balavan. He's one of my all-time favorite characters. He was funny, and the reference to SOB is because he's actually an Arizona Ranger, but he comes in, he takes over this school for a little while, and some of the kids are kind of smart alecky, and in fact, when he arrived, they were dangling the other teacher down in the well by his feet. So Sam's got his work cut out for him with this bunch, and so he writes his name, and he just writes S.O.B, and then one of the kids, of course, says something about it, and Sam turns around and he says, "And don't you forget it."
Now,
he said, "You'd do well to remember that."
that's it. Now, wait a minute. So did you have that? How did that? Was that a piece in your mind? And you're like, I'm going to make this work out into the story. How'd you come up with that?
I had the idea of what I wanted to happen, and I had Sam writing up, and I had to have something happening, because you can't just have somebody writing up and nothing happens, So he writes up, and these kids are dangling this poor teacher down the well, and he rescues the guy, and kind of sets these kids straight, and then the heroine runs the general store, and of course the bratty kid is her younger brother.
Oh God.
So this gives Sam a reason to go and talk to her, and he's really there on a totally other mission, but this is his I don't know, I guess you'd say his cover.
Okay. All right. See, they're layered. You got layered characters in there. Christine wants to know, are you planning on writing any more books?
Oh, absolutely. I'm writing one right now.
All right.
And I plan to write until I fall over.
Okay. That sounds good.
As long as they'll buy them, I'll write them. That's my motto.
That's good. And isn't it nice to have a career that when you think about you've got something to write, it's not like a knot in your stomach. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell this story,
It's wonderful to be able to do what you love, what you would do anyway. And be paid for it, make a living that way, is just the most marvelous gift. It's a huge blessing. So yes, I'm working on a new book right now, and it's one of the Painted Pony Creek books, which you'll get familiar with them if you read Country Born or Country Proud or Country Strong. Those are the three names of those books. And I liked the town. Again, it's fictional. I made it up. Because, if you don't make up the town, if you use a real town, there are always these people there that are in the historical society.
Yes.
So you lose a lot of freedom, because if you have the wrong building in the wrong place or something, they're going to be upset. So in order to avoid that, and I think tons of writers do this, I usually just use I've used Seattle, but back in the day, but usually I want a fictional town.
And you can use Seattle or New York City because it's so big. You know what
right.
I mean?
I mentioned they're usually where somebody has come from or something, but they don't usually figure in the story.
Right. And our last question is from Arlene. She says, have you ever collaborated with another author?
Absolutely not. I am really kind of, what do I want to say? I'm territorial about my stories. If it has my name on it, I don't know. I don't like to collaborate. I wouldn't do that.
You know what else too is that it would be hard only because you have to find someone who has exactly the same voice as you, as you're right. You know what I mean? They're not going to. Yeah.
It's hard. We all have our own voice, which makes reading one of the things that makes reading so wonderful. There's only one of each writer, and that's an important thing. No, I'm pretty territorial and jealous, I wouldn't want to do that. I fall in love with the hero. I wouldn't want to share him with anybody.
And you know what? That is, I love that you said that, because that's what makes a good book. When, if the author is just pumping those books out for whatever reason, and there's a time that did happen, especially if you were like in that series and they had one, like three a month came out, and it depended upon which line in the series that, I get that. But when you say you fell in love with your character, I mean, that means they're real, and that makes the reader fall in love with that. There's this wonderful, and I can't quote it, I just saw it the other day, it was like on Facebook, and I posted it, and there was like, they were saying there's nothing wrong with falling in love with a fictional character. That it meant something moved you, you cried, you laughed, whatever. You're not crazy. And
No, absolutely not.
my students, they fall in love with characters all the time, and they learn life lessons from them, and sometimes it's cathartic when you're reading it. So I mean,
I
what a
mentioned Dorothy Dennett's books, and I was
yeah,
madly in love with Francis Crawford was his name. Lyman was his, I don't know, family holding or something. You know how they do things over there, the Duke of
yeah,
this and that.
yes,
But
yes.
he was really, really a good hero, and I was madly in love with him.
What about Jamie from Outlander? Have you ever read
Oh yeah, I read the first book, and yeah, he's a hunk. That was the
He's
greatest book.
delicious.
I I remember we went to RWA and they had put it at the lunch tables. We each got one, and most of us had read it by the time we went home. And it was just an outstanding book. And I actually don't watch a lot of TV, so that is why I haven't, followed. I have read other books in the series, but I have to admit I haven't read all of them. They're
Well,
pretty long and thick.
I was just gonna say they're big.
Yeah, they're big, but
Yeah,
yeah,
they're legendary, and the show is phenomenal. I think they just bring Claire and Jamie to life. I love it. How about Bridgerton? Have you ever read all of Julia Quinn's books, or watched? Oh, well, you don't watch too much
I
TV.
know Julia, and I haven't watched the series. I have read some of her books. She's a marvelous writer, and more
Terrific.
importantly, she's a marvelous person.
She
She's
is terrific.
really a delightful person. So yes, I know her, but yeah, I'm going to tell you a little secret here. A lot of us in our circle, we don't read each other's books. It's a strange thing. It's like it's kind of too personal, or it
Yeah,
feels invasive or
yeah.
something. So we don't, and it doesn't mean we don't have admiration. I've been friends with Robin Carr forever and a day, and I haven't watched a single episode of Virgin River, and I really don't know why that is.
It's okay. You know what? I get it. So, like, I'm going to relate it to like being a teacher. We don't want to stand, like, if I go running across the hallway and to my partner, and I run in his room, and if he was teaching writing at the time, because that's like my forte, I teach writing, he would be like, I'm like, why you stop and just keep continuing? I'm just picking out markers or whatever. And he's like, no, I don't want you to judge me. I'm like, oh my God, you're a phenomenal teacher. You're a teacher of the year. I'm not judging you. And then I would say to the students, I'm judging him, as a joke, and he'd get mad. But I get it. It's like too personal. It's like,
Yeah,
I
it
get
really is. It is too personal. I mean, you can sit with these people and tell them your life story and hear theirs. And I mean, it's ridiculous how long I've known Robin and Debbie and Kristen Hanna and and Jane Krantz. I mean, we go way back.
I love it. So I haven't been to one in years, but I've been to the RWA, big conventions and whatnot. So we may have crossed paths and didn't even
We
know it.
probably did.
We did, and we didn't even know it. That's
It used
amazing.
to be fun to go to all those different cities. I
Yes,
I don't do it anymore. I have to conserve my energy,
yes, yes. I
and
hear you.
conventions take a lot of energy.
They do. They're like, they're exciting, but then especially if you're there presenting in some capacity, that's exhausting alone right there.
Yeah, it is. Most of us are introverts, and at heart, and with the exception of Debbie Maycumber, who is the world's greatest extrovert. I don't know, uh, but most of us are introverted and need to refuel, where Debbie gets fuel from interacting with people. She's just marvelous with people, but it wears me out.
That's all right. That's okay. That's all right. You're using all that wonderful energy for wonderful storytelling, which is so exciting. I'm excited for you and for the movie. It's this Sunday in the States on the Hallmark Movies and Mystery channel. By me, it's 157. I don't know what it is in the rest of the nation. And it's on at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So your Pacific time, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it will air again in Canada on, did they tell me the 14th? I forget, but I will post it. And I'm going to do something with chickens in one of my posts. All right, we can say goodnight to everyone, but then stay on, and then we'll say goodnight in the studio. Bye,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody. Thanks for coming.
Oh, this was fun.